Right, welcome, and also to Jasmine there from Nelson Mandela Bay University, to both of you, and then specifically to you, Raik, that's joining us as the guest speaker. So I'm myself and Raik had a quick chat on email before the time, so I'm just going to share like one slide before I hand over to Raik on our discussion this afternoon, just putting it into context of financial coaching. So welcome to everybody that joined us. I see I got a few SMSs also of other people for some or other reason struggling to get into the conversation. So if we look from a financial coaching perspective, I always say we're trying to give more choice to our clients, and we're interested in their attitude towards the challenge they are experiencing, and we would most probably like to give them a better quality of existence through the choice that we can give them. Their current quality of existence depends on the results they are getting. And then from an ontological coaching perspective, we can work on two levels from a coaching perspective. The first is we can focus on communication and behavior, which is tools and techniques, or we can look at how do they observe the world. And how they observe the world is then structured on the language that they use, their moods, how they experience the world in terms of their moods and emotions, and how they then sense the world from their bodies and act from their bodies. We can also say that where language, moods, and body come together is structure of interpretation, and that's how they see the world. And the tools and techniques is the stuff that help them do the things that they do, and that results in that at the end of the day, what they get is the results that they get that impact on their either suffering or joy in life. So thinking of our conversation this afternoon, I think there's actually for me a nice distinction is if we engage with people that see the world differently, then we most probably need to adapt the way we engage in terms of the process that we follow, and have respect for them as legitimate others in terms of how they see the world and how they want to do things, but also understanding the see. And I think we always say we 50% of the conversation as coaches. So how do we observe and stay without judgment engaging with people that see the world differently? And a few months, 2 months ago, when Tracy talked to us about women in menopause, as part of that conversation that was interesting for me is also for somebody going through menopause, as an example, they seeing and experiencing the world differently. So how do we meet them where they are? And engage on that level. So also from a religious perspective, how do we meet people where they are and have an understanding? And that's why I'm so excited about this afternoon session. And then specifically, I think if we look at the ontological model, then specifically sitting within language, there's two things that stand out for me. Firstly is assertions. So assertions is where something is socially acceptable for a certain group of people or a certain country or whatever the case may be. That's a true assertion. So from a religious perspective, that's a true assertion. That is how people see the world, and that will influence also how they'll do things. And then secondly, on an individual level, it's also important to understand and not make a blanket statement and say all people from a certain religious background is seeing things as in a certain way. Is also to understand how an individual then form their judgments, what are their standards and what is their beliefs, and engaging on that level. So with that, I'm going to stop and Raik, thank you for being here. Raik is a practitioner that makes it more exciting to have him here because he not only brings theory to us and then also academic at the Nelson Mandela Bay University, and then specifically he's going to share some of the research he has done last year. And yeah, I'm looking forward. I did not read his paper yet, so it's also going to be new for me that he's going to share with us. So the group that's here is nice and interactive. So if you want to make them part of the conversation, right, you more then welcome to engage with everybody also on the call. So thanks, Rach. You should be able to share from your side. Let I just make sure. Yes.
Thanks, Hendrik. I'll share my screen shortly. Not sure if everyone can see that.
Yes. Positive. Thanks.
Perfect, perfect. Thanks for that introduction, Hendrik. So I think it's very profound what you just said now about perspectives and perceptions. I actually heard on the radio today that they were saying that we as a country are limited or kind of on the back foot because we view things from our own perceptions and we don't see things from other people's perspectives. And I thought it was very ironic that today's conversation would be things basically on perspectives, because at the end of the day, we all have our own viewpoint on life and how we look at life. And we can only understand things from our point of view. We can't see things from someone else's point of view. But if we gain some sort of knowledge, we can have a perspective of how other people view life. So I think today's session will give a perspective on a side of life that is of a minority group. I'd say the group that are the Muslim individuals within the South African country and the larger global population. So today's conversation will touch on the topic of Zakat, which I will be introducing. I can imagine that for a lot of you, that's probably the first time you've heard the word or the concept or the term. So I will be breaking it down, and then please feel free to ask any questions. If you want to ask questions during the conversation or at the end, please feel free. It will be I like that Hendrik said it's an interactive crowd that we have here, so I'm more than open to answering any questions. So I'll just start on what I'll be covering in this session. So I'll give a brief introduction on the concept of zakat and what it is. It's a fairly simple concept once you basically hear the definition. Then I'll be explaining the significance of it. So why is it important to the religion of Islam? So why does the Muslim individual hold this so dear to them? What's the significance and what purpose does it serve? And then there's also the eligibility part in terms of that not everyone can receive this benefit, meaning that if I have to pay this benefit, I can't just give it to anyone. I'll be going into that detail. And then more importantly, how do you calculate it? What is the formula behind it? What's the intricacies of the calculation? And then the distribution. How do you distribute the funds? And then just the practical implementation in terms of how do you, as a financial coach or a financial planner, actually sit with your client and have a conversation about this topic. So then introducing the topic of zakat and what it is. So basically, simply put, it's a charitable donation that not every Muslim has to make, but most Muslims have to make. So there is a qualifying criteria in terms of who is able to give or who has to give. So firstly, you just need to understand that it's a charitable donation that most Muslim individuals have to make. And they make this donation once a year. And it's typically after once a lunar year has surpassed. And to simply put it, a lunar year would be when we are observing the month of Ramadan. So that month changes each and every year due to the cycle of the moon. So just know that during the month of Ramadan, that is when zakah is due, or when the Muslim client has to pay the 2.5%. So this 2.5% is of the wealth that the individual possesses. So that wealth must be for a period of a whole year. So meaning that they must hold that wealth for the period of the whole year. I will be going into more detail in terms of what wealth they need to hold. So just know that for now, that zakat is a charitable donation that equates to 2.5% of an individual's wealth. And then the significance of it. So the reason as to why zakat is important is that it serves as one of the 5 pillars of the religion. So the religion consists of 5 pillars. The first being the Shahada, which is basically testifying that you are believing in one God and that there is only one true God. And then you get the prayer, which is the second one. And then the third one would be zakat. So the significance lies that the foundation of the religion is founded on these 5 pillars. So to observe zakat or the practice of zakat means that you are observing the foundation of the religion. So hence the importance behind it. It's basically the establishment of the religion and what it's founded upon. Then in terms of the purpose, so a lot of people or a lot of scholars will dispute the purpose of what zakat has in terms of its intention. So the main purpose of it is to bring about a sense of equality. And when I'm talking about equality, I'm meaning between the rich and poor. So it's saying that if you possess a certain amount of wealth, you need to give back to those that are less fortunate. So how it works is if you are giving zakat, you cannot receive it, and vice versa. If you are receiving, you cannot give because you are in one or two of the groups. You either have enough wealth to give or you do not have enough wealth so you can receive it. So the purpose essentially of zakat is to bring about a sense of balance to between rich and poor. And then another part of it is a spiritual part of you are cleansing your spirituality in terms of your money, you are doing good with your money. And it's very much, I suppose, advised in the religion that if you do good with your money, good will happen. Almost like good karma will take place after you do good with your money. But the main purpose of it is to bring a sense of balance between rich or poor in society and bring about a sense of equality. And then we'll move on to the eligibility part. So not everyone can just pay zakah. There is a set of rules that goes with it. So the first rule there, if you read, is an individual has to be a Muslim, meaning that you have to be a follower of the faith. It's not an obligation, obviously, if you are not practicing religion, it doesn't fall on you to pay the zakah, the 2.5%. So firstly, you have to be a Muslim, a follower of the Islamic religion. Then secondly, you have to be an adult, which means you have to be of the age of puberty, which regards, basically you have to be an adult at the end of the day. You have to be an adult that is able to earn an income. And then thirdly, you have to be of sane mind. So sane mind basically means you have to be able to make your own decisions, meaning that you do not need the assistance or help of another individual to help you to make decisions on a day-to-day basis. And then the last requirement would be the wealth requirement, which is the main or the biggest requirement, is do you possess enough wealth to pay zakah? So there is a threshold. So meaning that there is a amount that you need to reach in order to give, and that amount or threshold is known as nisab. So if you obtain or you have the nisab, which is the threshold, then you have to provide or pay zakah. And if you are below the nisab, which is the threshold, then you do not have to pay it. So more on nisab, which is the threshold. So the nisab is essentially the minimum amount of wealth that one needs to possess in order to contribute or give zakah on a yearly basis. So that amount they need to hold for a period of 12 months or from one Ramadan to the next Ramadan. So basically that would equate to 12 months either way. So the nisab was set years ago. The nisab is something that has come from the Holy Book, the Quran, and it is stated there that the nisab is either 85 grams of gold or 595 grams of silver. So it's not the actual amount of gold or the actual silver, it's the value of 85 grams of gold and then the value of 595 grams of silver. So if you reach either one of those values for a period of a year, then you have to pay nisab. So as you can see there from the example or from the slides, if it exceeds 105,536, you'd have to start paying zakah, or the opposite, or the alternative would be the silver amount. So if you possess that, then you need to pay zakah on a yearly basis. So it can change, meaning that if your wealth fluctuates, it doesn't mean that if you are meeting the threshold this year, you have to pay for the rest of your life. It does change on a yearly basis, meaning that if your wealth fluctuates, then your wealth or your payment of zakah would fluctuate as well. So you could pay it this month or this year, and in the following year, you don't have to pay it. Then, like I said, if you fall below the nisab, then you are eligible to receive the payment of zakah. You don't have to make the payment of zakah. And then moving on to how to calculate it. So there are 6 steps, which basically I've summarized from studies on how to calculate zakah. And the first one would be determine the zakah capacity. We'll be touching on that when we go proceed. And then step 2 is determine and calculate the total value of the zakatable assets. Sorry, the word zakatable assets has just fallen off the slide there. And then the third step is identify the liability deductibles. And then the fourth step, you can just read through that. We will be covering each step. So I'll take you through the process of how you go about calculating the zakah. So the first step is to determine the capacity. So what that basically means is what is the individual, your client's capacity to pay zakah? So do they meet the 4 criteria or eligibility that we've discussed previously? So meaning that are they a Muslim? Are they a follower of the religion? Are they an adult? Are they of sane mind? And do they have enough wealth? Are they above the threshold to pay zakah? So the first one is fairly straightforward. You just have to have a tick box exercise of do they have those 4 criteria or do they possess the 4 criteria to move on to step 2. Then step 2, it's quite long-winded. As you can see there, it's determining the total value of the zakatable asset. So basically what zakatable assets are is that assets that an individual possesses or holds that qualifies to be deducted as zakah. So meaning that, for example, if you have a car that you use for personal use, that would not be a zakatable asset because you are using that for personal use. There's no growth from it. You are not trading it. That would be disqualified as zakatable assets. So the general assets that are deemed to be zakatable are those assets that can grow and those assets that provide you with an income. Those are deemed as zakatable assets. So anything that provides you with growth in terms of wealth and anything that provides you with income. So it would be an investment that has a growth over a certain amount of period, or an investment that provides you with an income would be deemed as zakatable assets. So zakatable assets is something that was basically originated years back. So meaning when the religion was founded. So what was deemed zakatable back then and what's deemed zakatable now has changed over time. So starting back then, it would be more of your agricultural and livestock, meaning that people that were cattle herders, etc., they were deemed to be wealthy, and their zakatable assets were determined on the cows that they had, the sheep, etc. So as we've moved with times, zakat is now being applied to the amount of shares that an individual holds, their dividends that they receive, their pension fund, etc. But where it gets tricky with the shares, the dividends, and your pension fund, etc., zakat is only due on those shares or on those dividends or on the pension funds that are Sharia compliant. Meaning that Sharia compliant is the law of Islam. So Sharia compliant is literally the Islamic law. The word Sharia is law in Islam or in Arabic. So let's say, for example, I have a pension fund and my pension fund is invested in the Allan Gray Balance Fund, and that Allan Gray Balance Fund is invested in companies that, let's say, maybe are involved with gambling activities. I cannot deem that as a zakatable asset looking at that company, because anything that's involved with gambling is deemed to be, the word is haram or forbidden in Islam. So therefore, it cannot be deductible from my zakat. So therefore, it just falls away. You can't add that as a part of your wealth because it's not allowed in the religion. So that's where it gets tricky for clients and where financial coaches and financial advisors steps in. The clients do not know what they're invested in half the time. So if you have a pension fund, people take for granted that they just invested in the pension fund. They don't know that the pension fund is invested in its own individual funds that are invested in companies, etc. So that's where financial coaches come into play. They can help identify which of those funds are allowed or which of those funds are Sharia compliant. But I won't go into detail with that because there's not going to be enough time to cover all the shares and dividends, etc., in terms of what is allowed and not. But just know that it has to follow the Sharia law in terms of being compliant, meaning that it must be allowed by the religion to be invested in that product. And then it's also important to note that personal items, so let's say the clothing that you have on, your sneakers, your shoes, whatever, that is not redeemed as an asset or a part of your wealth. So if you have a laptop for personal use, that is not deemed as wealth. That is deemed as personal items. So you do not add that when you are calculating your total wealth. So anything that you have in terms of personal assets, in terms of what you use for personal day-to-day use, is not deemed as wealth in the eyes of the religion. And then step 3, so once you have determined what assets are deemed to be zakatable, meaning that are in line with the religion, you then have to deduct or subtract your liabilities. So in a nutshell, liabilities would be any credit. So any loans, any overdrafts, any debt that you have, you would minus because it's not deemed to be your own wealth. The religion sees it as you are borrowing money from someone else, so therefore it cannot be considered to be your wealth. So that is why you would minus it or deduct it, subtract it from the calculation, because it's not to be deemed as your own. It's someone else. It's the bank's money. It's a loan shark, whoever's money that you're borrowing. It's not your own money, so therefore it's not considered your own wealth. So you will minus it from the calculation. And then step 4 would be to calculate the net zakatable assets. So this is simply taking your total zakatable assets, so what you calculated in step 2, and you subtract your deductible liabilities, which would be any loans, personal overdrafts, credit cards, and then that answer or that equation would give you your net zakatable assets. And that amount you'll use for step 5. So step 5 would be determining whether you have crossed the threshold or reached the threshold. So let's say your net zakatable assets is 90,000 Rand, for example. There you will work out if you have crossed or reached the exceeded the limit. And if you've exceeded the limit, then you proceed with calculating your zakat, which would be the step 6, the final step. So with regards to gold and silver, the value changes every day. So therefore, it's difficult to give a set amount in terms of, okay, it's going to be 100,000 for the rest of the year. It's going to change on a daily basis. So when zakah is due, so that would be in the month of Ramadan, you would check whether the client is on that threshold or above that threshold or below that threshold. And if they're on or above that threshold, that gives you basically the green light to go to step 6. If they're not above or if they're below the threshold, then you can just not scrap, but you'll abandon the calculation because then the client does not have to pay zakat. So step 6 would simply, you take the value that you got. So let's say the client has wealth of 500,000. Then it would be 2.5% of that 500,000. So that 2.5% is what you then donate. So the client now has the option of they can either distribute the money themselves. So meaning that they can do and take the money that they've gotten, the 2.5%, and distribute it to a charity or whatever it may be, or they can take it to what we have in South Africa and globally, Zakat institutions. This is the commonly used pathway, is giving your money to the Zakat institution, who then distributes the funds to the needy. So essentially, they have the role of distributing zakat funds. That is their job. So 9 times out of 10, you'd find that a Muslim individual would go the zakat institution route instead of doing it personally. And the reason that they would go the zakat institution route is that as an individual, you're conflicted in terms of, am I doing the right thing? Am I following the laws of the religion? So to be on the safe side, they'd rather give it to a zakat institution. The zakat institution then would disperse the funds where needed. But the important thing to note is that the money cannot just be given to anyone. So if an individual decides to give the money themselves, they need to understand that they can't just give it to anyone. There are certain recipients that are eligible to receive and certain that are not. So the benefit with zakat institutions are that they know who's eligible and they know who's not eligible. So in South Africa, there are numerous zakat institutions. The biggest one that is currently in South Africa is SANZAF. They're the South African Zakat Association Fund, and they basically contribute most of South Africa's zakat in the country. And then you'll get Gift of the Givers, etc. I think a lot of people have heard of Gift of the Givers. They have a zakat section where they collect zakat and distribute the funds. So there are 8 recipients that can receive zakat. So these 8 recipients, there is a bit of, I'd suppose, people contest whether it's appropriate in today's age, because these 8 recipients was established or founded years ago when the religion was founded. So the first would be the poor. So a lot of people would say the poor and the needy are basically the same. So in the eyes of the religion, the poor are people that do not even attempt to qualify to pay zakah. So meaning that the poor are those that can never obtain a level of wealth to pay zakah, right? So those people are deserving essentially. Then the needy would be those that need but do have the possibility of paying zakah at some point in their life, meaning that they're not completely down and out, but they have the possibility of someday paying zakah. So that's where the distinguish between the poor and the needy is. Then the third recipient is zakat administrators. So those are the people that work for the previous slide company. So it would be zakat institutions. The people that actually distribute the zakat, they are deemed as a recipient. They can get the funds and then they'll disperse it. The fourth recipient is new Muslims. So it's those people that are new to the religion. So let's say you are someone, or let's say you have a client that's just entered the religion. Those people are entitled to receive the zakah. And the reason is the religion has found that a lot of people that come into the religion, if they have not been born into it, they are basically abandoned by their families. So therefore, they are deemed to be needy in that sense that they need some sort of financial backing or any backing to get themselves on their feet. And then friends of the Muslim community. So this would be anyone that is an advocate or supports the Muslim community. And then the fifth recipient is to free those in bondage. So this would be it's a bit difficult for today's age because slavery is not obviously as rife as it was back in the day, but this would be to free people from slavery or free people that are captives. You can use the funds to do that. So let's say there is someone that is taken by pirates, for example, on the coast of Somalia. You can use the funds to free those captives, and that would be a form of zakat that you are using to pay that. The sixth recipient is those in debt. So if there's anyone that you basically know as a Muslim that's in debt, you can use your zakat to settle their debt. And the reason for this is that in the religion, you are not supposed to have debt. It is actually against the religion, but the religion makes a kind of I'd say what's the word? Can't get to it now, sorry, but like there is a exclusion for those that who do have debt or incur debt for the right reasons, meaning that they are doing good with their money. Those people who have those debts, their debts can be settled. And then the seventh recipient is in the cause of God. So basically, if you are doing anything to bring people closer to God, you can receive zakah, meaning that if you're out there speaking almost like a missioner, a missioner that went out and spoke and spread the word of God, you can receive funds because those people are not really of the wealthy side. They do not receive funds for the work that they do. And then the last one is the stranded traveler. So this is basically anyone that is traveling and they are stranded. That is literally what it is. The person who is basically lost a sense of direction. So if they're on the road and they have nowhere to go and they have no money to get to where they want to be, you can provide that person with funds to get to where they want to be, and that would be deemed as a eligible recipient of zakah. So those are the 8 recipients. 9 times out of 10, people are contributing to the third recipient, which would be zakat administrators. Reason being is that the person who is contributing does not have to think about all the recipients and wonder if I am contributing or providing funds to the correct person. If you give it to the zakat administrator, they will ensure that it goes to the correct person. And then how do you incorporate zakah into your daily use or your daily routine? So a practical method would be to use the 6-step financial process. That's already in practice now. People already use that. So as a financial coach, you can use this. So the first step is obviously to establish and define the professional relationship. So here, to get that information from the client, you need to have the client to be on a level that they are comfortable to share, basically to share their religious beliefs, etc. So let's say you are not of the Islamic faith or a Muslim, you want your client to feel free and at ease to share this information with you. So provide or establish a rapport with the client that they feel comfortable enough to share this information with you. And that will go. Any questions? Was that a question there? No. So that will go a long way into establishing or defining the relationship and setting up the relationship going forward, where the client can actually come forward to you with their zakat problems or issues and ask you, how do I go about this? So the important part here, though, is to have some sort of basic understanding of what zakat is, or just some form of basic understanding of Islamic finance. It doesn't have to be in-depth at all. It can just be, I know what zakat is. And the nice thing about that, it will show the client that you're taking care and interest in something that is basically of interest to them and not to you. And that will set your relationship on a good footing going forward. And then step 2 would be collecting the client's information. So here you want to collect quantitative data and qualitative data. So the quantitative data that you want to collect is you want to see if the client is reaching that threshold, that nisab limit. So you want to see what investments they are invested in. And in terms of qualitative data, you want to get to know the client. So if you are going to take it on yourself to help this client disperse their zakat, you want to know what type of person they are so that you can help to disperse that zakah appropriately when it comes to that time. And then analyze and assess the client's financial situation. So here you are going to analyze the information that you've collected, the quantitative information and the qualitative, and determine what is zakatable, what is non-zakatable. So what assets can be added to the calculation, what assets can be subtracted to the calculation that we completed. And then the fourth step would be to identify and evaluate possible financial planning strategies. So here there could be various things that you could do. If the calculation is done with the client and you do the calculation and the client sees that they are not by the threshold, a lot of Muslim people that are not by the threshold want to achieve the threshold because they want to kind of pursue following through with all 5 pillars of the religion. So here you can kind of say, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to set aside some funds. We're going to increase your investments in this, that, whatever it may be. So here you can actually help the client achieve one of their pillars of the religion. Or on the flip end, you can have strategies to increase the amount of zakah that they pay. And then step 5 would be implementing financial planning recommendations. So any recommendations that you've given to the client in terms of helping them pay their zakah or get to the amount that they are eligible to pay zakah, you need to ensure that the client is following through with these recommendations that you provided. And yes, the client might not come to you as an Islamic professional, but they are coming to you for financial advice. So if you can kind of guide them in terms of financial advice, but with a Islamic touch, the client would really appreciate that. And then step 6 would be review and monitor the client's financial situation. So here it will kind of be keeping tabs on the client situation in terms of, are they reaching the threshold, on the cusp of reaching the threshold? Are they doing anything to get away from the threshold, meaning that are they bad investments that's causing a decrease in their wealth? How can you increase their wealth? So that would be the monitoring of the client situation in terms of the zakat obligations. And then how is zakat relevant to me? So I can imagine a lot of you or most of you are thinking, okay, this is interesting, but how is it relevant to me? So the first part would be inclusive financial planning. It's just making financial planning available to everyone. And meaning that, yes, it is available to everyone, but is it tailor-made and suited to everyone's specific needs and their religious beliefs, cultural beliefs? This would open up the doors in making that financial planning or financial coaching is available to all. And it's available to all, specifically to all, meaning that everyone will get a tailor-made financial plan suited to their beliefs, to their cultural sensitivities, etc. And then strengthens client relationships. So here, this would demonstrate if I am a Muslim client coming to you as a financial coach and you show an interest in zakat, that would immediately set off my trust and belief in you to do your job as a financial coach or as a financial planner. And going forward, that would just motivate me to come to you on a more regular basis, and I'll send people to you to kind of get more financial advice from you. So that would go a long way in strengthening client relationships. And I think beyond just a Muslim individual, other people of other faiths would see that, hey, this guy's incorporating this, or this lady's incorporating this into their way of doing financial advice. And then it could be a kind of, it will increase inclusivity in the way of building relationships with people from various faiths, cultural backgrounds, etc. And then market expansion. Financial planners who have the knowledge of zakat opens up a gateway or door to endless possibilities. Like I said before, if you show that you have interest in others' faiths, cultures, etc., it will make you more attractive and therefore expand your market and your potential clientele. It doesn't mean that you have to be a follower of the faith or believe in that, but you can just understand the perspective and have the knowledge to assist those that do have those beliefs or carry those certain beliefs. From my end, that's it. With regards to Zakat, that's just a basic breakdown of Zakat and what it is and what it entails. If there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Great. Thank you very much. Uh, as a planner, many moons ago, I worked very much in the Muslim market in Kimberley. So there's a lot of things running through my head, because I think there's also a lot of myths that comes with this. So most probably there's other people also. Emily, thanks. I see she says thank you very much. She needs to drop off. But it was very clear and informative for us. So thanks for being here, Emily. So the one that I was, or one of the many things that's going through my mind is the assets that's excluded. Working in that community, and that links also a little bit on the Sharia compliant investments. Some of my clients said, firstly, the first rule is do not invest in Sharia compliant, but some of them said you can invest in Sharia compliant investments, but then you must give away the interest that you receive. But it seems that actually on your presentation, if I invest in something that Sharia compliant is not Sharia compliant, it's actually against the law, and I cannot make good by giving it away then for a good cause. What is your view on that one?
That is 100% spot on. So it's basically that you've already went through, you can't make good bad, basically, or you can't make bad good. You've already chosen to invest in something that's not Sharia compliant, and now you want to use the interest that you received or the dividends from it to help out the community or whatever it may be. That is not, it's not basically on in terms of the Islamic law.
Yeah. So what I was thinking secondly was a lot of pension funds, if I think about it, do not necessarily provide for Sharia compliant investments, which is actually very bad. But what do you do then as a faithful Islamic client?
So I think in those instances, the client is kind of they in a bad spot. There's nothing they can do. It's not on purpose. So a big part of the religion is intention. So from my perspective, I'm invested in a pension fund with my employer, Nelson Mandela University. I am not invested in a Sharia compliant fund, right? Because that option is not available. So that is not my fault. My intention is to invest, obviously, but I do not have the option to invest in a Sharia compliant fund. So the client wouldn't be held in that situation of they did not have the option to invest in Sharia compliant. So therefore, it's not deemed to be their fault.
Thanks. Great. Alice, I see your hand is up. I think you muted, Alice.
Hi, I would like to understand how does the pension funds then see or handle 37 section C when money has to be distributed to the beneficiaries?
So the beneficiaries wouldn't come into play with Zakat. They would fall away. They do not receive anything. So once the individual's pension is dispersed or the individual is deceased, then the pension kind of falls away in terms of the wealth of the individual.
So who does the money pay to then?
The money would pay to, so in the Islamic religion, it depends if the person has an Islamic will or do they have basically a modern day will. So if they have an Islamic will, the money goes to the sons So 2/3 will go to the sons, and if they have a daughter, the daughter receives 1/3. And if there's no Islamic will in place, then the money is then distributed. Mainly, it goes to Zakat institutions who will then distribute the funds. But it's a bit tricky in South Africa because South Africa is not a Islamic state. So you can't expect the country to follow the laws of a religion. So it gets a bit tricky in South Africa if the person does not have an Islamic will. The same with marriage. People are not allowed to be married in community of property in the Islamic side, but people get legally married, and then they get legally married in community of property. So then it causes a bit of a tussle when it comes to the death of someone, because you're not supposed to be married in community of property. You're supposed to be married out of community of property. That's if you get married legally.
Okay,
I'm not sure if that.
it will be interesting to actually read through a few actual cases and to see what the end
Yes.
result was on that. Do you know if there's something like that, Hendrik?
I think Raik will be more on the ball of that
Oh,
because he
okay.
did his studies. Most probably, although we're just looking at that, I was thinking yet to your point, Alice and Raik, I perhaps also question before you answer there. I see it nearly as three parts that as a financial planner you need to consider. The first part is then what do I gift as zakat? The second part is how do I help my client to invest in the right way in terms of Sarai compliant funds and everything that's linked to that. And it's not just interest, etc. It's also how do I de-risk the portfolio? How do I make sure that there's benefit for other people in it? So I think it's wider than what people think. And then thirdly, to Alice's point, how do I make sure that distribution happens in terms of Islamic law? So that was the three parts that I was thinking that's important to be taken into consideration. Is there something else that I'm perhaps missing in that part that we also need to be cognitive of?
No, that summarizes actually very well in terms of how you'd go about dealing with the client. So I think what's important to note is what you've just touched on. I would say 90% of the Muslim population do not know. So it's very much taken for granted that if you are someone of a particular faith, that you just know everything about the religion. So we cannot expect the client to know these financial terms and the financial dealings of the religion, even how the wills work and the trust, etc. So a lot of people will say, but why doesn't the client just tell me this? Why don't they tell me about zakat? Why don't they tell me about the threshold, etc.? Then I tell them a lot of the times the client does not even know what they have to pay or who are the recipients. So and then people will say, but is that not unfair to expect me as a financial planner who's not a follower of the faith to know? So it gets kind of a bit of uh, a debate in terms of whose responsibility it is. But I think at the end of the day, if you're a financial planner or a financial coach, you take the responsibility of providing financial advice to everyone, regardless of their faith, religion, background, whatever. So I think if you are wanting to practice as a excellent financial advisor, you would take the onus on yourself to gain that knowledge because it is financial specific knowledge. Whether it's Islamic financial advice, it still falls under financial advice at the end of the day. So I think just a heads up would be 9 times out of 10, Muslim clients do not know what they need to be invested in or even what they are invested in to start with.
That's fair one.
Sorry, Alice, you go.
Do they go to a lawyer for Islamic will, or do they also have a specific process or someone that they have to do the Islamic will through, or does it need to be approved or something like that?
So you would get attorneys that are Muslims that provide Islamic wills, but then you also get what they call sheikhs, or like a priest that provides a will. So the the problem that arises there is that the sheikh or the priest does not have any legal right, whereas the attorney does. So the
Okay.
people think that going to either or is the same thing. So one would be legally binding, the other one is not legally binding. The other one is a culture, a traditional aspect. So there are attorneys, Islamic attorneys, that do provide professional Islamic wills, if they can set up trusts, etc., that do provide that service.
Okay, thank you very much.
Only a pleasure, only a pleasure.
Yeah.
I saw
So
a question in the chat,
yes,
I think it's from.
yes, yeah.
So with regards to that, both are correct. So the Nisab was set thousands of years ago, and it is basically whichever of the two is reached, you have to then pay zakah. So if you have 8K, 8K is then what you would pay. And I know it's a very big discrepancy, but that's what they were deemed back in the day. So the unique aspect of the religion is that they try to keep the religion untouched from how it was back in the day. So things have obviously progressed since then, but they have not changed what was done back then to suit modern day times, essentially. They've just adapted with the times and not tried to develop new ways of checking what the threshold is, etc. They've stuck with the gold and silver.
So that actually then means the lower of.
Yes, the
Yeah.
lower of the two. Yeah. So whichever one the client reaches first.
We nearly on 4 o'clock, but is there perhaps anybody else that's sitting with a burning question for Rai?
So if he has 60,000, then does he pay 2.5% on the 8K, or 2.5% on the 105K, or 2.5% on the value that he has?
2.5% on the value that he has.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, so in my mind, I've still got quite a few questions, but we can have that over a cup of coffee when I'm in PE
Yes,
again,
please,
Rai.
please. The question opens up my mind also.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting to find the interest from people. I never knew that people would be interested in it, so it's quite nice to see.
No, thank you very much. I think it's really enlightening from my side, although I've worked the market for so many years. It is because my to your point is I find that a lot of clients that is very faithful actually gets to a point where they freeze and don't do anything because they don't know what they must do and they don't know when they are actually going against the law. And then they go and discuss it sometimes with the priests, and then they are actually more confused. And I already had clients says, let's get the priest, you and me together, and we have a conversation, and then we then we make the decisions what's best for you. So no, I think it's totally topical and very important for us to take into consideration. So brilliant work you're doing, Raik, and thank you very much.
Ingrid,
And yeah,
sorry,
Alice,
I've got one more question before he goes.
no,
Um,
anytime.
because he said, if there's no will, or a will, it will be distributed to the sons and then to the daughter. But what about the wife?
So it's deemed, it's a very big debate. The sons are supposed to take care of their mother.
Oh, okay.
So
Oh,
in the religion, a lot of people are of the debate that the religion frowns upon women, but there's a big It's a well-known saying that heaven lies under the feet of your mother. So if you do not protect your mother or take care of your mother, you are deemed to be a bad son or a bad. The mother is gold in the religion. So the mother is not given the funds, but the sons have to look after their mother.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. It's only a pleasure.
Yeah, perhaps another question that comes up for me, and that's under the recipients. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I've also got it that if there's a woman that can't look after themselves, that is left as widows, that they can also be recipients.
Yes, because they would be deemed as the needy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the husband normally provides the financial income in the household, and then they would be regarded as the needy.
But then that institution will give it to them,
Correct, correct.
not the fund, not the pension fund.
No, because the pension fund wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have the onus to take on that knowledge or have that knowledge.
100%. Thank you very much, Roik. And yeah, all of the best and keep up the good work. I think this is great work that's not just of academic purposes, but is enriching the total industry. So thanks for that. So yeah.
Thank you, Hendrik, for providing me with this platform to have this conversation. I really appreciate it. It was very nice, actually. And thank you, Alice, for being interactive. I appreciate that.
A pleasure. Thanks. I want to know more, but I will learn.
Please
Yeah,
feel free to email me or contact me. I don't mind.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
we
you
can
very
have
much.
Raik's contact details because, yeah, there are lots of questions we would like to ask him.
No problem. I'm not sure if you can see my email address there. You're more than welcome to email me, and I'll gladly discuss any questions or answers that you need from any questions that you have.
Let me just take a picture before you take it off.
No, you're more than welcome, Alice.
Uh,
I know Andre was also quite quiet, but I know also he most probably also have, because we talked somewhere last week, I think he also most probably got a few questions. So yeah.
Dankie, Hendrik.
No, thank you very much for attending, everybody. And again, thanks, Raik, and all of the best for you and the team there at Nelson Mandela University. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Hendrik, and thanks to everyone. And I wish everyone well with regards to their financial coaching journey.